Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode of the Weekly Crusaders. My name's Sean Watts-Krug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. And today we are talking about two movies that came out during the week of May 21st through May 27th. I know this is coming out a little bit late, but it's Memorial Day weekend, and Sean works retail, so it's hard to get us available to shoot these things, especially in the summer. But we are talking about two comedies, I would say, is what we're looking for here is comedies. One's more of the spoof territory, and one of them feels like a spoof, but it's a serious. It's not a spoof movie. But we're going to actually, before we jump into it, Brian, what are your thoughts on the movies we selected today?
You know, these are. I mean, they're both essentially like screwball, silly comedies. Just the fact that one of them was a spoof, so people knew that. The other one, I think it was marketed almost more as an action movie. So, I mean, I think that kind of hurt it. But it's a movie that I think has been unfairly criticized over the years. I'm not going to defend. I'll get into this later, but I think a lot of people criticize it haven't even seen it. But I enjoy both these movies. I think they're fun. Anyway,
all right, we're going to start with my film first, which is the spoof comedy. My pick is a sequel because for some reason, I thought my brain always liked the sequel better than the first one, but I don't remember the first one barely at all. But we are talking about Hot Shots Part 2. Hot Shots Part 2 came out May 21st, 1993. Had a budget of $25 million. Had a weekend opening of $10.25 million. It was number 2 its opening weekend. Its highest rating overall. It had a finished box office of $133.75 million. 38.92 million domestic, 94.83 million international, which for 1993 standards, that's a big box office, and wow, international wise, blew it out of the water. Hot Shots. We talked about this on Weekend Crusaders a couple years back when we did National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon, which was I think it was a revisited, but and I were loving the shit out of it when we went back and we watched it. The early 90s is really when spoof comedies worked. I mean, you have these, you have like, not lethal weapons. You have the Naked Guns, makes it Loaded Weapon. And that when the spoofs were just straight up comedies and they use like action stuff, such as, Naked Gun was with, cops, and this stuff was like doing Top Gun and Rambo. It wasn't until Scary Movie where they went the horror route with it. And then, spoof movies got completely ruined by whatever studio did all those shitty ones. And now you can't do spoof movies anymore because it's just fucking awful. Yeah. But Hot Shots was one of those where I feel like with Hot Shots, they knew exactly what they were doing when making these spoof movies. Just like the Naked Guns. Naked Guns knew the cast they had. They had the writing team that was clever and smart with their spoofs. Do all the jokes hit? No, but you're having like 300 jokes in a movie. As long as you get about 150 of them good, or at least to go, it's going to be a success. Whereas most of the spoof movies, when it died, was like, oh, there was maybe 2 good jokes out of 500, and no one even laughed at those 2 because they were so over the rest of the movie. But Charlie Sheen, say what you want about the guy, because most actors we talk about on the show, we liked him here, and then they kind of became what they are now.
Everybody we like seems to go batshit crazy at some point, but yeah.
Exactly. They all eventually go crazy at some point. So I feel sorry for all the people that we say that are currently going right now, like Glenn Powell and
you're screwed.
Jonathan Tucker and all this stuff. You guys are fucked. Ben Foster, you are so screwed. But Charlie Sheen, before it went crazy, I mean, people know that because they love 2.5 Minutes stuff. He's a funny guy. He's a really funny guy. And when he did Hot Shots, which was the Top Gun spoof, it worked. It worked enough to get a sequel, which was Hot Shots Part 2, which I love that they did that way. You can always love spoofs for having just the best titles because they know they're going over the top with it, and it just works that way.
Like
and this one is more kind of like, what's that?
Like Airplane 2, the sequel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which, even though we don't like Airplane, but like I get to the hat for the title anyway. But this one's more a Rambo-esque kind of film. It still has a lot of the connecting characters from the first film, and it kind of continues the story to a point. But still is unique in its own way. I'll touch on it more here a little bit. Brian, what are your thoughts on the Hot Shots series? I say series, it's only 2 films, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think this is one of the better spoof films, one of the better parodies, and one of the better franchises. Even though, like I said, there's only 2 films, but you're right in that the same kind of era they did these. There was one called Mafia, which I thought was actually pretty funny. With Jay Moore, it kind of spoofed the Godfather movies, things like that. But that early '90s area was kind of the best time for these kind of movies. And like you said, when Scary Movie hit, when Scary Movie is actually one of the best ones, it's one of the better ones, but it also like just kind of paved the way for everything else that tried to copy it and ruined the genre.
It paved the way for mediocrity.
Yeah. So, but Hot Shots I thought was good. I was a little wary going back watching this one because this is one I have not rewatched in a long time, and I'm like, am I still gonna find this stuff funny? And it's like it started out. I was a little worried in the beginning because, like most spoof films, and like you kind of mentioned this, and like, for me, like for every one joke that works really well, there's probably a good 8 that don't, or that maybe maybe you just smirk at or kind of roll your eyes at because they throw out a lot of silly shit, especially in something like this. It's directed by Jim Abrahams, who is one of the guys behind like the airplane movies and stuff. That's one of the things they always did is there's for every joke you see in the forefront, there's 3 more going on in the background. Mm-hmm. And not everything works, and that's the way it is. But I was a little worried going on because a lot of the jokes in this movie are kind of infantile, or they're kind of the easy jokes, they're kind of silly. But by the time I got a good chunk into the movie, I'm like, you know what, I don't care. That's what I'm here for. I'm here for just silly humor, and that's exactly what I'm getting, and I really quite enjoyed it. Now, I do think that the movie has suffered a little bit over time because there's a lot of dated references in this movie. And I mean, some of them people are still going to get. I mean, the Gulf War and Saddam, obviously, mainly. And then there's Star Wars references and Terminator 2 and even Basic Instincts and stuff like that. But then, people watch it now when they get to like, jokes about the Energizer Bunny or Arsenio Hall's bark or George Bush puking on the Japanese dinner, or they reference 90s tennis stars and things like that. Or even the No Way Out scene. Like, how many people who watch this movie have seen No Way Out? I mean, come on, in the limo scene. So it's a lot of things people are going to be like, I don't really understand this joke. And so it does get a little bit dated. So I wonder for somebody not old like me, who doesn't know everything they're referring to, who didn't see it back in the day, if it's going to be as funny for them. I kind of think maybe not be. As far as I thought they had a great cast because Lloyd Bridges, he is the superstar of this movie and the first one as well. Because what's funny about him is like he was always like a serious actor until these Hot Shots movies, but it seems like he was just perfectly made for this kind of role, for this kind of thing. And I love him in this movie. It's the first place I ever saw Rowan Atkinson, I think, although he wasn't very funny in this, but this first place I saw him. And I loved that Richard Crenna essentially played his same role from Rambo. I thought that was kind of fun that they got the same guy to come in and do the same thing. Yeah, that's the majority of my thoughts there.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat with you, as I had not seen Hot Shots probably since the early 2000s. It had been a long time. So I remember when I picked it, I was like, oh, hell yeah, Hot Shots. And then it came time to watch. I was like, ooh, I don't know if this is going to be good or not. Like, I'm worried about this. And I was even more worried for the opening scene. It was like the whole, like, what was like the night in the life of Saddam Hussein kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, like there's all these jokes. A lot of them aren't hitting. And I was like getting really worried. But it wasn't until they got Charlie Sheen back on.
Yeah, he shows up doing the Rambo 3 fight thing. Yeah.
The Chinese Taipei match. Because like honestly, I was sitting here before the movie started. I was like, what do I actually remember from this movie? Because there was stuff that I ended up remembering, but I couldn't remember if it was the first movie or the second movie. But I was like, one thing that I 1,000% remember was that the Chinese Taipei match where he dips into like the fucking ice cream stuff. he's doing that. Like, I remember that scene 100%. And so when I saw that, I kind of was like, I love this scene so much. And then from there, I was fine. Like, I just had to get to that moment, which that moment was like in the first like 10 minutes. So I was fine. But once we got into that, and then we got oh god, what's her name?
Valeria Golino?
Valerie Golino, who plays Ramada. Once we got her back on the screen and all this, like, I it reminded me of what I liked about these movies. Like I said, they're fun, they're stupid, but it's what I like about it is like they're so devoted to it. Like they are like there's times where you like when you watch a bad spoof movie where you can tell like the actors are like just like this is fucking dumb. These one like Sheen and all of them, they are 100% in on this. Lloyd Bridges is 100% in as this character. The guy who plays Saddam is great in this. Charlie Sheen is fucking masterful in this. And can we also commend Charlie Sheen for getting fucking jacked for this movie? Because when I think of Charlie Sheen, I don't think of a ripped dude. I don't think of he just seems like one of those guys that's like he's got an attractive face. He's not like fat or anything, but I don't consider him like buff ass ripped. Dude got in some serious shape for this movie, so you got to commend him for that.
Yeah, he wasn't like Sylvester Stallone Rambo ripped, but he was seriously ripped. And I read an interview actually when I was looking into some data on this movie. There's apparently an interview with Charlie Sheen where he said the reason he decided to get so ripped is basically he was going to get shamed into it. He's like, I can't see myself going to the premiere of this and sitting around and people are laughing at me looking bad in my singlet.
But see, like that's what I'm talking about. Is like it's a spoof movie, but Charlie Sheen took it seriously enough to get like in actual shape.
Yeah.
Like, an actor who's never been that kind of shape guy, and he's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. And there's so much of this comedy, so many gags and little things. Also, can we commend Ryan Stiles? I love Ryan Stiles. This is because like I always knew him from the Drew Carey Show, and then of course Whose Lines It Anyway. I forgot he was in this movie, and I'm not saying he stole the show, but his jokes worked for me in this. But I had fun doing it. I loved, and that going back to callbacks for people who wouldn't get some things, the American Gladiator part, I love because we need to bring that show back, people. American Gladiators, like American Ninja Warrior is fun and all.
Gina Carano's unemployed.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole reason Gina Carano is even relevant is because of that, and then MMA fighting. Let's get American Gladiators back on the main screen because I want to see that shit again. I miss the blazers and the lasers and ice and all that kind of shit. But this movie was just fun. Like it wasn't like necessarily laugh out loud funny anymore, but it was just more like, huh.
Yeah, it's a lot of little chuckle smirk you get out of me, but there was very few laugh out loud moments. I mean, the stuff I seemed to laugh out loud at was actually kind of more of the throwaway gags. It wasn't like the big ones that stretch out. It's like, in the helicopter, and I think it's Miguel Ferrer's putting on the black makeup. And he goes to hand to the next guy, the black guy. He's like,
I laughed so hard at that scene. I was like, oh, that joke worked great. And then like even oh god, I can't remember the exact quote. He like Charlie Sheen's reading like Great Expectations. He's like, how is he? He goes, I'm underwhelmed. or someone was like it's not exceeding its expectations. It's a literary quote, but it was a funny joke. I'm not like busting laughing, more like that was clever. But that's the things that I think you and I appreciate for the spoof movies is, especially with Loaded Weapon, was immensely. It's like here's the joke that everyone else is paying attention to, and then there's the jokes behind it. Mm-hmm. And you and I always thought the jokes behind the main joke were the best parts. Like, I honestly love and appreciate when they did the T-1000 scene, and they were smart enough to remember, oh, he's mixing with the dog.
Yeah. So
he naturally, like, that is, and it's such a quick boom and gone, but it was like, you know what? For a spoof movie, you could have been lazy, and you could have forgotten about that, but you remembered that, and you made that part of the gag. And I appreciate that. And there's just a bunch of little jokes like that. Like, I love the whole like mole thing. Like that was such a big thing. Yeah. It's just like, and even the No Way Out scene, it wasn't more or less like the callback to that movie, but just I really like the limo driver just constantly changing different things. Like it's little things like that just work. And then he still finds them in the room. Cause like the diving board part, I thought that was the first one. So like when they were doing it, I was like, oh, that's this one. Cause I could have sworn that was Ramada in First Hot Shots and not her. But yeah, there's
she could go all night like a lumberjack.
Yes. That's right. But I also liked like when they're visiting Topper I always loved how Ramada says topper too. Like that, I always loved how she used the word verbiage for that. But there's like the moment where like Topper's talking to the general dude, but like in the background, like all the monks are like doing weird poses and weird like tricks for the hot chick, like just little things like that.
Yeah,
Like I said, it's a spoof movie that worked for what it was back in the early 90s, and it's not like a need or something that people want to do nowadays because it got ruined because of it being overly used and just fucking lazy in the was it 2010s or late
early
2000s?
2000s, actually mid 2000s,
Yeah.
mid 2000s. Yeah,
Like it got ruined because it was just oversaturated with crap. But these are one of the good ones, and I'm not saying you should go out of your way to go check it out, but if you want to see Charlie Sheen and what worked for him, like I even love that inside joke scene with him and his father, because like it's clearly doing Apocalypse Now and him, and there's like you're expecting it's like I loved you in Wall Street, and I just love that like lingering smile that Charlie Sheen has because like you get like he's smiling at his dad.
yeah.
And it's just a funny moment, and I love that moment, and it's a fun film. It's an enjoyable film. It's not like gonna blow you away or be like an amazing experience, but it's a fun 90s throwback film. Obviously I would watch the first one as well because they go great hand in hand. Because that's the one thing is after I watched this, I was like, I kind of wish I watched Hot Shots before this, just so I was in the like boom boom kind of thing.
Mhm.
Not that you need to, but I kind of wish I had. But yeah, they're short films compared to the way movies are now. You can probably get both Hot Shots done before you get done with most of the long movies that are out today.
Oh yeah, this one's under 90 minutes long. Yeah,
Yeah, it's under 90 minutes. And I think Hot Shots Part 1 is also
probably
like
about the same. Yeah.
yeah. They're quick. They go boom boom boom. They go. They don't slow down. They like you either get the joke or they move on to the next joke and the next one, and the next one. And if you're laughing at one, you probably miss the next three because it just hits you with them so quickly. And that's also good. It's fluid joke writing. But like I said, not all of them hit, but one of them is going to hit in that region, and that's what's going to capture it because you'll be laughing at that one. You'll miss probably the next three. You'll laugh at the next one, miss the next three. And then when you go back and rewatch them, you'll catch those other jokes. And so it keeps it relevant throughout in multiple rewatches. Was there anything else you wanted to add for Hot Shots?
No, if you want to see it, it is on Max, not HBO Max, just Max.
Yes, we are in the Max age now.
Max, the place to watch Hot Shots.
Yes, and weird other film or shows that I had never ever wanted to watch before, but are now keep popping up on my Max feed. But anyway, we're now moving on to a movie, Brian's film. This is a movie that I had to talk Brian into not changing because Brian. This is a movie. Actually, we're gonna go ahead and let me get through all the shit, and then I'll intro and then I'll go deep for it. We're talking about Hudson Hawk, guys. Bruce Willis's comedy action film, Hudson Hawk. It came out May 24th, 1991. Had a budget of $65 million. Had a weekend opening of $7.08 million. It was number 3 its opening weekend, its highest rating. Had a finished box office of oh man, my budget stuff's all messed up. I don't know why. Hold on. Cut it real. Yeah, my shit's all messed up. I think I have a mixture of Maverick from last week and this. I thought I wrote all down. It didn't make a lot of money. Let's just say that, guys. I'll when I'm airing this, it'll be the right stuff, but what I got in front of me is wrong, so I apologize. It didn't make a lot of money, sadly.
Budget of 65. It grossed $17 million in the U.S. According to
it's 17.22 million. It's the domestic international thing that Oh yeah, that's right, because it didn't do domestic. That's why I didn't write anything. Yeah, so I did have everything right. It made 17.22 million, but it only was domestic. It didn't go international. That's why I didn't add anything to it. But anyway, so we fixed it. Yeah, it definitely did not make its budget back. So this is a movie. I had never seen it up till this week when Brian chose it. I've heard about it. I've heard of this weird Bruce Willis action film called Hudson Hawk. I didn't know much about it, but I heard it was a cult favorite. But I also heard it was a film that almost didn't get him Die Hard. And I was like, weird. Okay. But didn't this come out after Die Hard?
It came out after Die Hard 2.
Okay. There was some. Then this isn't it, because I always heard there was a movie that almost didn't get Bruce Willis Die Hard. It was one of his first films.
He was doing Moonlighting on TV.
There was a movie he did before Die Hard that bombed, and the director didn't want him for Die Hard because it bombed. I'll have to look it up. For some reason, I always thought it was Hudson Hawk, but now looking at the notes, I'm like, well, that's 100% not right, because Hudson Hawk came out after Die Hard. But yeah, this movie is, I never really knew much about it. It's just this kind of aura of a film. And so Brian picked it, and I got excited because I was like, oh, I'm finally going to get to watch this movie. And then we were about ready to start. And I think we were shooting last week's episode. And Brian's like, I don't know if I want to keep Hudson Hawk anymore. And I was like, why? He's like, because you're going to hate it. And I really like this movie, and I don't want to have to defend it against you. And I go, no, just keep it, because I want to watch it. And this will make me watch this movie. And if you change it, there's no guarantee that I'll ever watch this movie ever. And so we kept it. He has no idea what I think about this film. So we're going to go ahead and hand it now back over to Brian so he can talk about Hudson Hawk from his point of view.
So Hudson Hawk, which real quickly, Wikipedia, because Box Office Mojo does not list international information for it, but according to Box Office Wikipedia, it says it actually made 17 million in the US and 80 million international, for a total of 97 million. But after marketing and stuff, yes, it did still lose money. But anyway,
it was Blind Date. It was Blind Date. That was the movie that
Blind Date
didn't get him.
Fun movie.
I remember Blind Date. I thought it was good.
Apparently that'll lead perfectly into this, because so Hudson Hawk came out, and I was Bruce Willis at this point was one of my favorite actors on the planet. Now you got to understand, this is early 90s Bruce Willis, when he still cared, when he still had fun. He would still smile in a movie, and it was more than just a little smirk. He actually seemed to be enjoying himself.
Full teeth.
I had loved him on Moonlighting. I enjoyed Blind Date and some of his other movies. I loved, of course, Die Hard and Die Hard 2. And so next thing you know, he was coming out in this movie, which apparently was like his passion project. It's also the very definition of a vanity project, because this is a movie where this is Bruce Willis's idea from the beginning. It's an idea for a film that he'd had for years, and him and his friend came up with the story. I mean, they handed it off to screenwriters to actually flesh it out, but he's actually credited as a story credit on it. And, even though it had, its own director and other producers and writers, this was one of those movies where Bruce Willis was in charge. He was the one in charge of this movie of every step of the way. And you can kind of tell when they're vanity projects like that, because when no one wants to say no to the star, kind of thing, because things get a little weird. It is directed by Michael Lehman, who I love he directed Heathers, he directed Airheads, he directed 40 Days and 40 Nights, he directed Truth About Cats and Dogs, and of course he directed this. It's written by one of the guys the guy who wrote Die Hard 1 and 2. I'm guessing he did more like the action beats, because it's also co-written by Daniel Waters, who is the writer of Heathers and Demolition Man and Batman Returns, who I think handled more of like the dialogue and comedy to it. Yeah. So first of all, the cast they assembled.
That's not a good way to start this, because
I'm still wondering where you're going with this, because I'm like, Sean is going to hate this movie, and maybe he didn't, but I think it's one of those movies where, like I was talking about earlier, I think that it all depends on what you're expecting going in. Now, not everybody's going to love it, even if they know that, of course, but I think it helps, because I think if you came into this movie looking for a Bruce Willis Die Hard action movie kind of thing, you're going to be disappointed, because it's silly. It's completely silly. It's supposed to be silly. It's a screwball comedy, right down to the Looney Tunes-esque sound effects, the over-the-top cartoonish characters, like the Minervas. I mean, like the Mayflowers. You got slapstick comedy all over the place. So it's definitely a comedy first and kind of an action second. And I think if you know that going in, you will enjoy it a lot more, because I just think it had fun. There's stupid things like this using the timing of songs to time their capers. That would never work in real life, because you're making all that noise singing songs and shit. But it's something different. It's something fun. And of course, more importantly, Bruce Willis wanted to sing, because this is about the same time he came out with his albums too. So, again, they weren't going to say no to Bruce Willis, because he's basically in charge of this movie. You got David Caruso in an early role. You got Frank Stallone in there. James Coburn, who is, I remember we talked a couple weeks ago about like the early 90s.
Last week with Maverick.
Yeah, he was in Maverick, and Somebody else was their second appearance this week. Oh, Bruce Willis, because he was in Over the Hedge.
Over the Hedge.
Yeah. But James, we talked a couple weeks back about how in the early 90s, there's like the go-to villains. They go to the same people all the time. We were talking about Dennis Hopper and Malcolm McDowell, I think we were talking about at the time. But another one of those is James Coburn, who played the villain in this. He played the villain in Young Guns 2, in Maverick, of course, even in Sister Act 2 and Payback and some other movies. So I liked James Coburn in these kind of roles. I've honestly never seen him in a good guy role. Like back in his early days, I haven't really seen his early acting stuff. So maybe
I guess you could count Commodore as a good guy because I mean he was never really a bad guy.
At the end, he's the one who tried to cheat about his money, stole the money, and went off with it.
But so did everyone in that movie. So everyone's a bad guy in Maverick if that's the case.
But yeah, I mean, it's a silly movie, but it's one that I just really enjoyed and had fun. Now, in the years since then, I maybe have come down on it a little bit, and I understand people's criticisms of it to some extent, because it's really goofy. But I still just enjoy it for what it is. And like I said, just watching Bruce Willis be able to have fun, I enjoy that. And I think a lot of people who criticize it haven't even seen it. They've just heard this legacy of Hudson Hawk as being one of the worst movies ever, you know? So more people should actually check it out for themselves. Now, Sean, as someone who hadn't seen it before,
yeah,
what are your thoughts?
Well,
I'm sorry, what are your thoughts?
First things first. Brian did not tell me what movie I was coming into. So I had no idea what film this was. He did not give me a heads up telling me the comedy aspects of it. So
you thought it was a plain straight action?
Yes.
Oh,
I thought it was an action film.
I thought
it was just maybe like a no, because I honestly thought it was going to be something like in terms of comedy, I was thinking more maybe like a Fifth Element kind of comedy or like a Romancing the Stone, because I still had no idea what the fuck this film was. And Hudson Hawk, I was like, because I never saw pictures for this movie, but then like when I actually like clicked on it on I can't remember where I was watching it from, where I clicked on it, it shows the picture of him and Anna McDowell like gliding. So I was like, okay, I don't know what this movie is. And then the movie starts, and it does start off kind of like the Fifth Element. It's like, and there's like a weird ass narrator, and it's in the
narrator of Rocky and Bullwinkle, by the way.
Who was it?
The narrator of the old Rocky and Bullwinkle TV show.
Thank you. I couldn't pinpoint who. I was like, I know who the fuck is this voice, and I was gonna look it up, and I never did. But I was like, the whole time I was like, I know I've heard this voice before.
William Conrad is his name. Yeah.
Yes. And so I was like, okay, what fucking movie is this? I'm so confused. This movie is the closest I think I've ever seen to a live action Looney Tunes film.
Absolutely, yeah.
Without there being any Looney Tunes characters in the movie. It's incredibly wacky. It's fucking all over the place. Like just random shit happening for no story structural reasons except for let's just throw some weird shit in here. Let's just have this group of people show up randomly who are named after candy bars. What are they here for? I don't fucking know, but we're gonna have them keep showing up.
It's the new CIA.
Let's have Annie McDowell play this one character, and then you find out that she's a nun, and then there's like these fucking talking statues of the Pope, and it's like, what the fuck is this movie? I don't know what it is. And the Mayflower people, oh my god, shoot me in a brain when they were ever on screen. Especially what's her name, Sandra Barnhart, who I've never been a fan of. She's always atrocious, and she is Parker Posey level bad in this film. And Richard E. Grant is just, I like when villains chew the scenery. He's chewing it all wrong. He's doing it the wrong way. But here's the thing. I loved the music aspect of it. I loved that was like his little shtick. That like anytime someone mentions a timing thing, he immediately knew a song. I loved the friendship between Bruce Willis and Danny. Is it Aiello?
Aiello, yeah.
Yeah, who played Tommy Five Tone. I enjoyed the fuck out of those two together. When they were on screen, I enjoyed the film. I also enjoyed it for the most part when Bruce Willis and Andy McDowell were on screen together. But that's the problem. They're not on screen a whole lot together. They are in the beginning. Like, I love that first little heist they do in the beginning where they're singing the song and they're kind of making fun of the fat security card and they're doing all this. Like, I was like, okay. I kind of reminded me of the movie you had me watch 2 years ago. Was it Masterminds for Weekend Crusaders?
Did I have you watch that movie?
It was the one with like Robert Redford and
Sneakers.
They were like Sneakers.
Yeah, the Mastermind is a Patrick Stewart movie. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah, no, Sneakers. I meant, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be like a Sneakers situation, but Bruce Willis. I was like, okay, it's like they're heist people, like Italian Job. He uses music to kind of do his shit, which I agree. They're way too fucking loud when they're singing, but okay, whatever.
Fun. Who cares?
But I'm fine with it. And then the heist ends, and then you start bringing in the Mayflowers and the Kit Kat Snicker Doodle bullshit. And I'm just like, you're losing me on this. You're losing me. And then, like, at just the point where I was like, I'm really disliking this film, his buddy comes back, and then he becomes part of it. And I'm like, okay, cool. As long as these two aren't on screen together, I am a part of this. And then, you know, they got separated again. And then Annie McDowell gets kidnapped. She starts doing fucking dolphin noises for whatever fucking reason. Because I guess they're like, what's the noise you do? I can do a really good dolphin. Do that for
drugged. Come on.
No, but oh my God, is that nauseum? But but once again, the crux of this film is the relationship between Hudson and Tommy. Because I loved watching those two work together. I had a blast watching those guys because they're fun. And when they're on screen, I was actually having a fun time. But this film is a fucking mess. It's a mess of a movie. It is a movie that you have to have extreme patience for. If you're on board for the wacky ride, best way to describe what's the Disney ride? It's like Wild Toad's Wild Ride or some shit. Ride. Where you're spinning the fucking steering wheel and it's just gonna go wherever the fuck you want. You really don't have a control over the car. That's what this movie is. You are hoping it's gonna get on the road, but it's gonna go off the road, up the hill, through a house like Twister, back down, and then it finally gets back on the road again. And then it's like, ooh, squirrel. And then it chases it, tries to run over the car with the squirrel, and then tries to get back on the road. And then it sees another squirrel. And it goes up and down over there. And then you're like, is this movie ever going to find its way back home? Kind of. Not really, but kind of. But when it ended, I was like, it found its way home by the end. So it's a very uneven film. I don't think it deserves all the hate. It's not a good movie, but I don't think it deserves all the hate. It's definitely not anywhere remotely close to the realm of one of Bruce Willis's worst films. Like, I can think of 30 other movies.
And we're not even talking about the direct-to-video stuff.
Yes, I can think of way other worse films that Bruce Willis has been in. But yeah, I can see where this movie can be a cult favorite. I can see where Brian likes this. This is kind of the best way to describe this for you, Brian. This is the detention situation. I can see where you like this shit. And much like detention, there was parts in this that I enjoyed. But there's all this other excess crap that they could have just done without or toned it down just a little bit. I did laugh. I did honestly laugh way too hard at the dog at the end. That's all I'm gonna say for I know it's a almost
ball.
32-year ball. I'm not gonna say what happens to the dog. I laughed way harder than I should have for that scene, but it's especially the first time he meets me, like, oh, I was so close, I was almost there. But there's a funny, enjoyable film in there. You really, really have to look for it, but a lot of it is because of Bruce Willis's charisma. He has really awesome charisma that he so used to ride really, really well, and then it just went away. And that could have just been because he went Harrison Ford on us and he just stopped like giving a shit. But it just made me go, I really miss this kind of Bruce Willis. I miss this fun, like almost Ryan Reynolds-esque kind of just like charisma, back talk, just won't shut the fuck up, but everything he delivers is fucking funny. I miss that kind of Bruce. And his buddy Danny Aiello, he was great in the film. I thought he was a great number 2. Andie MacDowell is solid. I'm not normally a big Andie MacDowell fan, but I liked her in the film for the most part as well. It was just everything else that didn't work for me. So I would say for Brian, I know it's not an Oscar situation for you where you're like, yes, but I didn't hate the movie. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate the movie. So I would think this is a win.
Take it.
It was like in terms of best case scenario is Oscar. This is right in the middle. It's definitely the 1991 version of Detention for me, where I was just like, it didn't work for me, but I can see where you liked it. It's a 2.5 star film at best.
I don't, like I said, I don't give it 5 stars. I give it a 3.5. But for me, that's just, like I said, it's enjoyable fun. And it's another one where I really just, it's far from one of the worst films of all time, like its reputation.
I agree.
And I just want more people to give it a chance on its own merits and not judge it just by its reputation.
Let's put it this way. The best way I can describe this movie to people who actually get warned about what the movie is ahead of time, unlike Brian telling me about this film.
I thought you knew.
No, I
didn't think you already knew about basically a live action Looney Tunes, which is, like I said, perfect example of it. But I did think you knew it was a comedy. So
if you wanted to see what Bruce Willis would be like if he was a live action Bugs Bunny, this is it. This is it. Because he's basically Bugs Bunny in this movie. And I mean that in the most positive way. I really do. I don't mean that in a negative. I mean that very positively. If you want to see
that's what they're going for. If you ask him about this movie, that's kind of what they're going for. Yeah.
If you want to see him as Bugs Bunny, but not an actual bunny, but as him as Bruce Willis, then you're going to enjoy this movie and just know that the rest of the world is Looney Tunes. And I think if you went in with that mindset, I think honestly you'd probably be more open to it. You'd be more okay with it because you're just like, okay, I'm expecting wacky Looney stuff. Whereas like if you go into it going, all right, this is like a heist action film, like I thought it was, I'd be like, what the fuck is going on? Kind of thing. So I had to kind of like pause it myself at one point in this film, going, reset. What am I watching here? And once I realized like what I'm watching, I was actually able to kind of enjoy it a little bit more. So I feel like this is a movie that needs to kind of be explained to somebody and not go in blind. And if they go in blind, they're gonna fucking hate it. If they go in with kind of a mindset of what it is, I think they're gonna come out of it more positive than negative, or at least more like neutral to it. But yeah, it's definitely not the worst Bruce Willis film. I don't think it deserved all the hate that it gets. It's a, let's put it this way, it's a very 90s-esque kind of film, like late 80s, 90s film. It would not work by today's standards. Today's standards, it would be a Razzie hit and all this kind of crap.
I was going to say, it won the Golden. It won Worst Picture at the Razzies for this year, beating out things like Cool as Ice, starring Vanilla Ice, Dice Rules, starring Andres Clay, and Nothing But Trouble, which is a horrible movie, and Return to the Blue Lagoon. Explain that to me, anyway.
Anything you'd like to add for Hudson Hawk?
No, it's unfortunately not free to watch anywhere right now, but it pops up on services all the time, so check it out.
Yeah, I had to. It was very hard for me to find. Let's just say that. I definitely had to do some searching to try to find this movie. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Weekly Crusaders. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next week, we've got 2 older films again. And when I say older, we're talking about 80s, 90s films.
That's not old. Shut up.
Older for some of the people that watch this shit. Like I said, all the references you're talking about that people didn't get, like I knew all those references from Hot Shots. But
anybody who saw it back in the day, they got that stuff. But yeah, people watch it first time now. Sorry.
This upcoming week's my film is definitely Hudson Hawk in a way where I know the movie it is. I, as a kid, loved this movie, knowing that it's not a good movie. But if you know the movie you're watching, you'll appreciate it. If you go into it without knowing what it is, you're going to fucking hate it. And I fully expect to have to defend myself, much like Brian thought he was going to have to do today with Hudson Hawk. Brian, your film, I don't know what it is, but I saw the cast and I'm excited to watch it.
It's an ensemble comedy with a great cast that, again, I think, especially considering the people that are in this movie, I'm surprised that as few people as I have seen it have. But it's good.
We're staying on that kind. Well, mine's more of an action film, but it's got some comedy elements. Comedy for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, Sean convinced me to move this to this show because it was originally going to be a pick for Cinemasochism.
And I told him, I go, if you pick it as Cinemasochism, I'm going to be defending the shit out of this film. To
be fair, I considered putting Hudson Hawk on Cinemasochism just because of reputation, and I was going to make it like in defense of. But so you can do the same thing here.
Yeah. So we both decided to move them over to this one. So that's going to be next week's episode. We got Cinemasochism still coming out. Like I said, it's just been a busy week for us. We're still coming out with the one that we had intended, which is a movie that I did not know was an actual film, especially by movie posters. We're finally going to watch that and have that on the show. Coming up next in terms of reviews, obviously Little Mermaid's review's out right now. Brian still has not seen it because he doesn't want to watch it. Check out my non-spoiler review of The Little Mermaid if you guys are interested. Coming up next, though, I think one of my more anticipated films of the year, I think it was my number 2 most anticipated film of the summer, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse?
Across.
Yeah, Across the Spider-Verse. I'm so excited to see this movie, as well as The Boogeyman, which I'm still not quite sure if I'm really in the mindset to watch this or not, because I'm not loving the trailers for it. I don't know. I'll probably check it out at some point. If not this week, I'll check it out at some point. We may have a review for it. We may not, but we will 1,000% have a review for Spider-Verse because absolutely. But yeah, we got much more coming down on the channel, so be on the lookout for all that. But until next time, we are the Movie Crusaders. I'm Sean Wasserkrug. That is Brian Michaels. And in case we don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.